If you notice at the end, can anybody say what the third voting issue the neg had given?
Please, not all at once.
Or can anybody say what the last point on the second contention of the 1MC was?
Was that about like diaspora?
Yeah. And what were the responses to that?
That like it's not perfect and they'll face like white nationalism in Europe and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then on what was the affirmative second voted?
Like that, wait, the affirmative? Was that the in the long term, oh yeah, like in the long term, structural oppression isn't really mitigated?
Yeah. So what happened with this round was Rajiv was talking about coverage, and on this, both impact scenarios on the last contentions were essentially conceded by the end. Like the app had that response of like, you can't have people free, but it wasn't extended into the 2AR. So both sides had, and the neg did not answer the guerrilla warfare. So both sides had conceded impact scenarios. So what did the round come to? How did the neg win when both link chains, which we'll talk about today, were both conceded?
I think weighing the magnitude of like the deaths caused by violence.
Yeah, that's it. I believe it was the Kim 07 card, or it was that, and also the Chenoweth 17 card, which both the Chenoweth 17 card, this is a really powerful tool if you do the research and find an author that ended up contradicting themselves in later years. That can be like, because it basically can like also make them seem like they're not like as well prepared. And the neg did very good weighing in her third voter of the 2AR, because which speech comes first? Well, which speech is last, the 2AR or the 2NR?
The 2AR.
Exactly. AF has that advantage of speaking last. So what the neg did was very strategic. In her third voter, she said that AF is going to get up here and say that guerrilla warfare will end up helping us minimize the structural violence. But the fact is, his own author, Chenoweth 17, ended up saying that violent revolutions end up leading to more mass killings by the government. Diasporas are peaceful, and it was Leonard 15 says that they will be able to use this to cause change. And so therefore diasporas are more effective, essentially. And what did the AF do in the 2AR? They said guerrilla warfare will help us, but he never had that direct clash with her third voter. And then at least if I was judging, that's where I would say the neg really clearly wins the round. So like yesterday when we were talking about weighing, that's where weighing is really important. If both impacts are conceded, that's how you still win. So yeah. Any questions on that?
I think that from what I'm hearing from Sid, that's just like a good example of when we're talking about weighing is like important, which is when both teams are winning some of their impacts. Like they're probably both winning that like their link chain is like relatively probable. However, like where that leads to and how you evaluate those conclusions are really important. And that's what my calculus is for. Because even though you might think you're winning, but they don't get access to their impacts, making sure that you're in the judge's head and it's like, okay, maybe they do get access, But even if they do, mine is still better. So, I mean, if you don't have access to your own, you're going to lose. But impact calculus is kind of hedging your bets by saying, even if they also get theirs, I can still win.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think yesterday, probably an important teaching point is that a lot of the times I think that just sort of naturally you have the tendency to focus more on your impact in your debates than your opponent's impact. But weighing is really about impact comparison. So you can like say that, your particular impact is like really, really bad. But unless you actually directly compare it to what your opponent's impact is doing, right? And you provide a reason why you should prefer, something for being more something than the other thing. Like you should prefer my impact because it results in more deaths than the other impact, right? That's very direct. And that's the type of comparison that you want to use if you're going to, win these debates and establish actual weighing, as opposed to just establishing the weight of your scenario without, putting the other scenario on the scale and seeing how they balance out.
Yeah, one thing I noticed yesterday was that a lot of the impacts we gave you guys were very common debate impacts. So even if you just spent like 20 seconds explaining your impact and in the next like minute comparing it to your opponents, I think your time would have been like better spent there than explaining to us why like nuclear war is a bad thing. Like you could probably just say everyone dies in a giant radioactive explosion, and like that's true, like that's bad. But then if you like spend the rest of your time comparing it, I think that's like definitely more like efficient with your time, and especially in debate, which is a timed event. Time is what you're trying to conserve the most of, so using it most efficiently is probably the most important skill that you can end up gaining from debate.
Yeah, I'll give an example from the finals. Like based on the strategy that Praj's opponent Cameron employed, I think Praj probably, like, say it was a real debate, right? And he was deciding how much time do I spend on impact calculus. I probably would have given him the impact calc debate had he just been like, bioweapons cause extinction. They have unlimited potential, so there's always some risk that they kill every human on Earth. That outweighs on magnitude. Even a 1% risk of extinction outweighs any other impact because extinction is irreversible and it means no possible future for humanity. All right, see you, Sid. And so, yeah, I think that, if you can keep your weighing simple and, to the point, like you can do that, but you need to decide like what is going to be the differentiating mechanism between the two, I don't know, between the two impacts, because else it can just get kind of muddled. But some impacts are, they lend themselves more to, one mode of comparison than another. And, you'll like feel that out and flesh that out as you get, I think, a bit further into debate.
Okay, do you want to do any questions on yesterday or any of the round from last night? Nope. Okay. Rajiv, do you want to start the flowing thing?
Sure. Wait, you want me to read?
Sure.
Do
you want to read?
Wait 1 second. Is it just here or is it in the drive? Because when I try to download it, Chrome like blocks me from downloading it.
It's not on the drive.
It's on the staff channel.
Yeah, no, I meant let's see.
Also, everybody should save their flows from the round, or you can even try reflowing the round after we've talked about it to see if you can pick up some of those nuances. Because we're going to be using this round as an example for like strategy and things like that. Because there's a couple of things that are really key that I want to point out later on. So yeah.
So could you just like DM me the doc?
Yeah. If that doesn't work, I can put it in the Dropbox.
Okay.
Do you know how I know that this doc is from you, Sid?
How?
All the cards are over highlighted.
Yeah.
That could be anyone though.
Yeah.
But mostly Sid.
Yeah, Chrome is still being very sad.
I'll just put on the Dropbox.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jackson, you gonna flow?
Flow what? Oh,
This
maybe if I bring out a piece of paper. Right now I'm putting the file on there.
Yeah.
Here, I just put it like in the big folder.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you probably do one of the contentions, and then we can also break that down because we're going over contentions.
Sure. Sure. So just a contention, or okay, cool. All right. Man, what is speech doing?
I think they're doing
They're
like
learning.
speeches.
Well, that's what we're doing, Anthony.
We're also learning.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you open the
It's-
doc yet, Rajiv?
Yeah, I just opened it. All right, sure. So is everyone ready? This will be sort of a good format for how, like contentions, arguments basically will be made within debate. So here,
So yeah, if you
if
have
everyone is ready, I can
paper and
begin.
pencil.
Everyone good? All the people, are you ready to flow? All right. One sec, actually. I don't know if you got that.
Wait, what's the topic? Like, do we need to know that?
No, but it's nukes.
Are you just reading a contention?
Yeah, just one contention. All right. So, yeah, all right. Hopefully everyone's ready. At this point, I'll just begin. Contention 1 is deterrence. Deterrence is when states possess nukes to reduce the chance of another state attacking them or engaging in conflict. Deterrence is the most effective way to avoid war, according to Mesquita and Riker, 82. When they analyzed conflicts between 1945 and 1976, they found a clear relationship between the size of nuclear arsenals in conflict and what resulted. They separated the amount of nuclear involvement in separate categories such as countries that possess nukes, had indirect access, etc. The most important finding of the study is that Mesquita and Riker found a clear correlation that as the involvement of nuclear arsenals increased, the amount of conflict decreased. And the Cold War is historical proof of deterrence working. Lebau and Stein wrote in 95, to deter the Soviet Union, the US needed to prevail at any level of conflict. This required a larger nuclear arsenal and highly accurate missiles necessary to dig out and destroy missiles in their silos and bunkers where the elite would take refuge. Nuclear deterrence was far more robust than proponents of warfighting acknowledged and required only limited capabilities. Several hundred nuclear weapons would probably suffice. The capability to destroy the Soviet Union was therefore sufficient to deter attack. And theories of rationality supporting deterrence should not be rejected. That's Quackenbush and Zagare 16. Specifications of deterrence that presume rational behavior are empirically suspect. Theories that assume rational actors should not be rejected. They should be judged by accuracy. When these are supported empirically, the assumption of rationality has served its purpose. The impact is deaths from conventional war. Without nuclear weapons, conventional wars happen, causing deaths. Afghanistan proves. The Watson Institute of Brown University writes in 2020, the war in Afghanistan continues destroying lives. Civilians have been killed by crossfires, IEDs, assassinations, and night raids. The war has also inflicted invisible wounds. The Afghan Ministry of Public Health reported that 2/3 of Afghans suffer from mental health problems. Those war effects included elevated rates of disease, malnutrition, and reduced access to healthcare. Nearly every factor associated with premature death is exacerbated by the current war. About 147,000 people have been killed in the Afghanistan war. More than 38,000 of those killed have been civilians. As Afghanistan doesn't have nuclear weapons, the conflict has not been deterred. There is examples such as North Korea and Iran, where we have not gone to war and nuclear weapons have prevented conflict. And conventional wars are extended and hard to end, requiring external forces such as nukes to minimize the conflict. That's Bergs in 15. The nature of conflicts is dramatically altered. They've become geographically dispersed and lengthy. conflicts are also becoming multifaceted in the way several humanitarian crises combine. Furthermore, technological advances combined with ideological or religious conflict mean conflicts are difficult to end. The political will to resolve conflicts or invest in peace and prevention of violent conflict is lacking. In such a way, bodies are deliberately being targeted to spread messages of fear and control. For instance, in Gaza, a disability shelter was bombed, illustrating how ideas of the protection of the vulnerable do not hold true. All right, that's the end of the contention.
Do you want to maybe do a mock cross-section, Rajiv?
Sure.
Okay. Does anyone else want to ask him questions, or do you want me to? I have a couple I could ask. No,
Also,
no
for
takers.
those of you who don't know, the topic was states ought to eliminate their nuclear arsenals, and this was a negative argument saying that we should keep them, of course.
Sure. Okay. I'll just ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so you make this argument that Afghanistan proves that like wars without nukes are bad, correct?
Yeah.
So is the resulting conflict in Afghanistan like the result of a proxy war between the US and the Soviet Union because they weren't able to fight each other with nukes? So instead they engaged in conventional war through
Maybe
proxies in Afghanistan?
historically, but the way that the war in Afghanistan developed in the early 2000s is probably more of a direct response to the war on terror. Whereas obviously historically Afghanistan is a quagmire for empire, and probably Soviet destabilization may have been a cause of the insurgent groups who the U.S. is now fighting. I think that the more contingent cause would be the neoconservative commitment to the war on terror.
Okay. I guess kind of like as a yes or no question, as states acquire nuclear weapons, do those who already have nukes become like fearful of them?
Yeah, we'll probably defend that fear is good, and especially in the context of states who are rational actors.
Okay, even if fear is good, let's say something like the invasion of Iraq, right? Which is predicated upon the idea, falsely, that they were developing weapons of mass destruction, which led to the death of some 600,000 Iraqi civilians. In a world without nukes, we would not have invaded Iraq because there wouldn't have been any threat of a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So how does all states acquiring nukes not lead to those like preventatory wars by nations who already have nuclear weapons?
Right.
attempting to
So
preserve
I
their
would say that's probably a difference. Like, I don't think that this topic is necessarily about proliferation. That's probably a difference between like opaque proliferation and transparent proliferation. So proliferation is done in secret, as it sort of historically has been by most great powers who now possess nukes. I don't think that that'll necessarily be a problem. Moreover, it's probably a question of secondary strike capability insofar as if the United States intelligence on Iraq, which, as you said, was a lie. But if the intelligence were to state that Iran would have enough, would have a large enough stockpile to conduct a secondary strike, even if the United States were to first strike, then it would probably, not be wise for the United States, even if they truly believe that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, to start a war, because again, mutually assured destruction would mean that they would not.
True, yeah, but like it takes time to achieve that second strike capability.
Yeah,
and even today, like after the ending of the JCPOA, we're already seeing like rising tensions between the US and Iran, primarily because they're developing nuclear weapons and haven't yet reached that second strike capability.
Yeah, so I mean, I would just say we can probably have like a an internal link debate about whether like opaque proliferation is possible given like the existence of the IAEA. But if we're saying prolif is good, we'll probably defend opaque prolif, which would occur in secret.
Okay, that was like a 3-minute cross-sex about nukes.
Also, just like FYI for everybody, Jackson and Rajiv do have a lot more background knowledge than the typical debater, just because nukes come up a lot in policy. Like, of course, like most people learned a lot about like prolif and stuff for the nukes topic, but like they debate that stuff a lot. So like it's not like they were just like pulling it, like they just magically knew all of it. Just like a side note.
Yeah.
Does anybody?
We did learn it through magic.
Does anybody want to try doing, or like, does anybody want? Are there like two people? One who wants to try giving a cross-ex, one who wants to try answering the cross-ex for this?
Fair, Silas. Fair. Silas,
maybe we could just see your flows.
Do you want
to hold up your flows? Maybe we should just get a quick look at them.
Me?
Just like everyone.
With the flows, everyone. With the death good, it's directed at you.
Okay. Why do you have multiple columns, Emily?
What do you mean?
Why do you have multiple columns on
Same
your
with
flow?
priors, right? I think I saw multiple.
No, I think Frost just had one column.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I kind of see two distinct.
I see like three or
arrow.
four. I see like 3 columns on your flow, Emily, right?
Wait, what do you mean though? Like these are the different speeches.
But we
Oh, sorry. Is this the flow from
the round yesterday.
Yeah, from the
yesterday?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, no.
No,
we meant
not from. Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
this
talking
is bad, but I
uh
wrote definitely too much there. But
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. Probably just
Spacing.
spacing is what I'd say.
yeah,
I was
How's
like
mine.
Yeah, Anthony, yours looks beautiful.
Thanks, Chief.
I've never seen someone flow so
Gosh.
much with so little ink.
Yash, can you show us your flow? Can you hold it close up to the camera? I just like can't.
It's a bit
read it.
blown out right now.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. Why don't here. If we have like example flows that we can use for like, we can just like post in at some point in like the LD resources on Discord. That might be
Yeah.
helpful.
Let me just scroll through all my photos. I know I have some somewhere, but I like thrown out a lot of flows recently.
I think one thing that like Jackson and I, or that particularly Jackson's questions did well, is that they attempted to set up his offense. I was doing my best to predict where he was going with things and sort of preemptively answer them, like when he asked me about fear, for example. But yeah, like understanding what your opponent is trying to do and understanding what you're trying to do, the arguments you're planning to make in a cross-ex is probably an important part of I don't know, knowing which questions to ask and what answers to give.
Yep. I cannot find any pictures of flows. I've scrolled through so many pictures.
Anyway. Wait, is Sid still here? No, he's gone. Sad.
Rip Sid. Okay. Okay. Do we want to give the contentions lecture? I guess?
Yeah, I think we probably can do that.
Just one tip for flowing, and if you're trying to improve your spacing, is when you write something, even in the beginning, if you just want to hold up like 2 or 3 fingers before you write the next line, that can be really helpful. And then that gives you like a visual like sense of how much space you're going to need. And then eventually you can not have to use the fingers, but that's helpful. Okay, let me bring up the presentation. Okay, so obviously the people who have done debate before should already understand basically what a contention is. But people who are more new, obviously, this is just a good review and how they should be set up, so they're not just like all over the place, trying to make multiple arguments, that they're clear and focused, and you can explain them simply and not try to like squish too much into them. So by definition, contention is more or less the body paragraph of your case. It can have subpoints, it can have somewhat like individual but like still linked together arguments. The contention is essentially trying to lay out an independent argument that supports like your framework. That says, oh, voting this way will lead to something that is good under my framework. So you might have one contention that makes one completely separate argument, and a different contention that makes it a completely separate argument. They shouldn't really be, trying to interact with each other too much. It can either be a reason that the resolution is good if you're AF, or the reason that the resolution is bad if you're neg. And it essentially just lays out a link chain to vote for you. In this case, the link chain being, if we vote, these things will happen, which will lead to these impacts, which we say mean you should vote for us.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I was actually just going to say this. So a link chain, it's sort of an ambiguous term, maybe if you're especially if you're just newer to debate. So what a link chain is and why we use that terminology is if you imagine a chain, right? Like a metal chain, it has like a number of links, right? And each one is connected. And you need to sort of traverse each, the series of links to get from one side of the chain to the other. And in other ways, a link chain is similar to like, an actual metal chain in that it like relies on its weakest link, and it, like its strength depends on the strengths of each part. But anyway, I think that it's important to understand the common parts of the link chains of offensive arguments. So we'll discuss 4 here. And so the first and one, I would say out of all of these, the one that is most overlooked within debate, particularly, like low-level debates, is uniqueness. And I think we discussed uniqueness on at least one other occasion, or maybe just implicitly. But uniqueness has to do basically with whether an impact that you're arguing would be unique to the world that you're espousing. So what that means is, suppose you're the affirmative and you're defending some change, like the resolution enacts some change, while the negative is just defending the way things are now, the status quo. That's not always what it's going to be, but that's sort of what frequently things are going to end up being like. Now, if you make an argument that voting affirmative, say voting affirmative creates economic growth or something, and it avoids a catastrophic decline. So I would say an important part of that is winning that in the status quo, in the negative world, there would be a catastrophic decline, right? So if you're the affirmative and you're making an argument, for it to be unique to your world, you have to prove that in the other person's world, basically, that it would, that benefit would not occur, because else that benefit wouldn't be unique to your world and it wouldn't be a reason to vote for you. On the other hand, suppose you were the negative and you were attempting to defend the status quo and say that if you vote affirmative, something bad happens. You would also need to show that that bad thing wouldn't just happen already based on the way things are in the status quo. Because then, again, that argument wouldn't be unique to the affirmative, since regardless of whether you vote affirmative or not and support the resolution or not, that bad thing is going to happen. So uniqueness basically says the way things are in my opponent's world will be different from the way that I say things will change in my world, or the way that that I think that's the gist of it. So typically, if you're the negative, you need to prove that the status quo is sustainable, whereas if you are the affirmative, you need to prove that there is a problem in the status quo that the affirmative solves, right? Because else there would be no need for the affirmative, and for the negative, else the sort of impact to the disadvantage, or to the whatever offensive argument that you're making would be inevitable. So yeah, we can look at the link level now. So the link is the next part of a contention, I would say. So the link says, like, this is how the AF causes something which is good or bad. So this is how the AF departs from the uniqueness in the status quo. So if the status quo is good and you're the negative, you're saying the link is how the AF makes the status quo worse. Whereas if you are the affirmative and you're saying the status quo is bad, the link shows how the affirmative makes the status quo better. And it does it basically by linking the action, whether it's the policy action or maybe the moral action of the affirmative, to some scenario, or to some change, which is later impacted out in the rest of the contention. So the link is just basically how you connect your argument that you're going to make in the contention to the resolution. So for the nuclear deterrence example,
Rajiv,
yeah, what's up?
these are explained more, like there's slides for each of
Oh,
these.
there's slides for these?
Yeah,
okay.
Oh.
Sorry, I zoned out for a bit and then I realized, like, oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
okay,
so
yeah.
this is just where we can point stuff out, or we can use the deterrence example, whichever one you want.
Yeah, sure. So yeah. Okay. So
Where do you
I
want me to
think
go,
this-
Rajiv?
What? Yeah,
Wait.
this is probably better.
Okay.
So yeah, the link, it's critical to linking the resolution to whatever argument you're going to make. So in the example of deterrence, right, you were making an argument that nuclear deterrence is good, and that's a reason to vote negative, right? But in that case, you would need to establish that voting affirmative collapses nuclear deterrence, because else, I could just say, like, I don't know, like, the Dalai Lama is cool, so vote negative. I would probably need to win that, like, the affirmative negatively impacts the Dalai Lama in some way in order for my argument to make sense. So similarly, the link is just what connects the resolution or the actions of one side to the argument that you're making. Also, in the context of nuclear deterrence, the uniqueness level. Wait, can someone tell me what they think uniqueness would be for the deterrence argument?
Maybe we should give like the sheep going to Canada example.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to give it?
Wait, did I come up? I forget.
I think you came up with this one.
All right.
So
sure.
The
You can
argument
explain
says, okay, it doesn't matter what the resolution is, doesn't matter what the app says, doesn't matter what the neg says. One team makes the argument that like, okay, all the sheep in the U.S. are going to Canada. This is going to cause farmers to lose money, so they're going to become angry, probably at like immigrants for no reason, and then they're going to vote for Trump, and Trump is going to win, and we're all going to die in a nuclear war. So at a uniqueness level, the basic response to the sheep are going to Canada is that A, the sheep are already going to Canada, or the sheep are already in Canada. You're saying the effects of whatever policy that lead to the sheep going to Canada, it's already happened, right? You can't just like claim that these things are going to happen when they've already been triggered. The status quo, if your link chain is true, is already going to lead down that path. The link level is some argument that links voting one way or the other to whether or not the sheep start going to Canada. If you say that they're not going to go anywhere, then guess what? Nothing bad is going to happen. If you say the link is somehow linking voting one way to something happening regarding sheep going to Canada. I know we hadn't really touched on it yet, but the internal link is essentially all of those steps that I took to get from the sheep going to Canada to Donald Trump being elected and killing us all. So the like political arguments about like farmers in the Midwest becoming angry and like the Republican base blames it on immigrants or something, like sheep don't like brown people, I don't know. Whatever weird argument you come up with, that's the internal link that jumps you from that initial, the resolution causes a thing, to impact. And the final impact would be Trump gets reelected and like causes a war with Iran or something. So
go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah.
Here's a more real world example.
Yeah. Yash, can you so this is like the argument mapping we were doing. This is also good for like practicing link, like identifying like link, internal link impact. Yash, can you identify at which stage in this argument mapping, where is the uniqueness?
Okay.
Wait, Sid. I feel like the uniqueness, like there's no one line which like is all uniqueness,
Yeah, that was kind of the point. Like,
all right, never mind.
Yeah, it was like kind of like a trick question. Like the whole point is that uniqueness isn't directly in the argument mapping, but Jackson, if you go to the next slide. Wait. Go two more ahead. Yeah, this is the uniqueness card for it. So
that wasn't in the outline that you gave Yash.
Yeah, I know.
It was
How would you call
question.
Yash out? Like, that's just mean.
Yeah.
You called anyone else out, and you called the littlest guy here.
So the point is, like, in your argument mapping, because that's like sometimes we forget to have uniqueness, like Rashid said, but also because like it's not as explicit in the argument. But like I debated Jackson with this case, and he destroyed me because I didn't have uniqueness. So then I cut this card and put it in there. So Jackson, can you go back one slide? So does everybody understand how uniqueness functions in this argument?
You haven't told them what the uniqueness is yet.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so the uniqueness basically says that in the status quo, climate change is going to happen. And then, so the AF argument is that if we eliminate subsidies, we can stop climate change.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about it this way. Uniqueness will establish whether or not what the scenario that you're addressing is a problem already. if you're the AF and you're saying we should make a change, then you should say there's a problem now and we're going to change that scenario so it's better. If you're the neg and you're saying we should stick with what we've got, you need to establish that what we've got is good, but the AF risks making it worse, right? So uniqueness is basically like, is what we've got now good or is what we've got now bad? And, each side needs to win their particular version of that.
And as Sid was saying, uniqueness can be really important if you don't have it. So his argument was essentially this link chain right here. We eliminate subsidies, and that helps solve climate change. But he never really read a card that said we can solve climate change at all, or that it's not already inevitable. So essentially, in my negative speech, I just read like 5 cards that were all like, we're past the brink, climate change is inevitable. So because Sid didn't have any uniqueness to say that we still have the ability to, go to that slide, to solve the problem, like this card says, oh, it'll hit a point of no return in 2030. I read evidence saying we had already hit a point of no return. And if that means that the status quo has climate change and the world of the AF has climate change, then there's no reason to vote AF.
Yeah.
Also, this card was good because the last line basically says that the neg can't access any climate change impacts because it says we need a change. So yeah, that's also where uniqueness functions.
And generally, right, if there is a problem now, then like the reason there's a problem is because there hasn't been a change, right? So like if you change something, you risk making it better or worse. You risk changing the situation. But if it's bad now, you're more comfortable risking like a change because it's already bad. So I guess it can only become better, right? And that's more of an advanced debate argument, I would say. But yeah, we can keep going in the presentation,
Okay.
I think.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, we already discussed what uniqueness would be in this scenario. If you go back, Jackson, to the previous slide.
Go back one more. Because we should try have them identify link within this to make sure everybody's like. Yes.
So yeah, you can see the resolution at the top. Anyone can answer this. What do you think is the link in this scenario? Based on what we discussed about what a link is, namely it connects the resolutional action to the scenario of the contention.
Is it less fossil fuel use?
Well, so what's the resolution, Praj?
Okay, the resolution just basically says that the United States should eliminate subsidies for fossil fuels.
Okay. So the resolution eliminates subsidies.
Uh-huh.
So sorry, you can answer.
I'm confused. Can you say that
Okay,
again?
yeah. So if the resolution, its action is eliminating subsidies, then which part of this, of this map connects the resolution to the scenario that we're going to be talking about next? Does the resolution say the United States ought to use less fossil fuels?
No, it just says to eliminate the subsidies for fossil fuels.
Yeah, sure. So our argument is about how using less fossil fuels would be good. So when do we connect that to the resolution?
We're preventing CC, right?
Does the resolution say the United States
Okay,
should...
Praj, you almost had it, but less fossil fuel use on its own isn't the right answer.
So less fossil fuels leads to decreased carbon dioxide emission.
No.
Okay.
What line? There are 4 lines. You've already gone over 3 of them, but it's not okay. Whatever. You've already gone over all of them.
So
but
the 4th one is the impact, right? Saying that reducing the chance of extinction.
Which one of the lines ties the resolution to start some link chain?
Oh, the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one says eliminate subsidies. That's the resolution, and then the less fossil fuel usage. So that first one's the link. All right, cool.
Yeah, less fossil fuel use on its own isn't the link. It's that eliminating subsidies leads
to less, and then the lines 2 and 3, I'm guessing, are the internal links.
Yep.
So yeah, basically a link is resolution causes change. like most of the time.
Okay, all right, okay.
Also,
Yeah, go ahead.
are you going on to internal link?
I mean that's what I was gonna say next, but if you have anything to add.
Like, there's just something I had in speak notes. So can anybody identify what happens if the link isn't there? Like, how does that affect the argument?
Like, it just seems like you're jumping to conclusions and like it's not, you don't have evidence.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, like it would be like me talking about the Dalai Lama, right? Like, what does that have to do with the resolution? So yeah. Anyway, that's a good point. Also, as Jackson was saying earlier, and Sid was saying, if you don't have uniqueness, it's difficult to prove that your impact or your contention is unique. Like, so maybe it is true, but it's not unique to your world. So yeah, let's talk about internal links. So if the link says that the resolution causes a change, an internal link is anytime we say that change causes a change, right? And sometimes internal link stories within debates can become convoluted, overly long, confusing. But yeah, this is normally this is how you get from your link scenario to your impact scenario. And remember, yesterday we said an impact is something that like matters, right? So in the abstract, if I'm a judge with like no knowledge of the world, which is sort of the way that judges are instructed to judge debates, then I might say I might not have a reason to believe that less fossil fuel use is good on its own. So if you want to move to the next slide, Jackson. So like, say we were just to read the link, I might not understand why less fossil fuel use is good. So if your impact in this case is extinction from climate change, then you want to have some way to get from less fossil fuel use to preventing extinction from climate change. So you can achieve that through a series of internal links. So the first internal link would be like, okay, the change that we established the link creates is less fossil fuel use. That creates another change, decreased carbon emissions. Decreased carbon emissions, that's a change. That creates another change, preventing climate change. And then finally, we have the impact level. But the internal links are basically how we get from something that the link causes to ultimately what we want our impact to be. And yeah,
I have a question.
Go for it.
So if you were to like read cards or like logically prove that the internal link like wouldn't happen, so if you're trying to like say that an impact wouldn't happen in a certain scenario, would you like attack the fact that maybe the decreased carbon emissions won't prevent climate change, or something within the internal link that would like say that something actually wouldn't lead to another thing?
Yep. And so, yeah, I think that's a good argument. So that's probably a good point of comparison from what we looked at the last slide. So suppose you remove the third line from this. Suppose you remove the third line from this. So suppose you didn't say decreased carbon emissions led to preventing climate change. So like, how would that affect your argument, you think?
I mean, like, the whole point of it is that climate change leads to extinction. So if you don't have that link, like, what's the point?
Right, exactly. So if you don't have, and like each of your internal links is necessary to get from your link to your impact. And so the impact is the reason that we care about something. And so if, the internal link chain stops before we get to something that we care about, like that's you're not going to get any offense from that. So yeah, if you were to remove any of these internal links, then the disad would be, or this argument about fossil fuels would not have any risk at all. Like there, because if we're talking about getting from one place to another, and we prove that any link in the chain is like totally invalid, then we basically say the entire chain, there's no way of getting from point A to point B if one of the intermediate routes is totally blocked. If that's a dumb analogy.
This is more of like a visual metaphor. Imagine you have like a wrecking ball, right? So you have a chain of links, right? And at the end you have a giant wrecking ball.
This is good.
So and it's gonna hit like your car. Uniqueness is saying it hasn't already hit your car. Because it's already hit your car, but like that's bad. right? So you need the card to be good to start with. Then all your internal links, like you say, okay, the plan causes the wrecking ball to start moving, right? That's your link. Voting one way causes it to start swinging. If you don't cause it to start swinging, nothing's going to happen. Then your internal links. If you cut any of the chains, then it's just nothing's going to happen, right? The wrecking ball is going to fall straight down. It's not going to hit your car, which is good for like the affirmative, or if you're arguing against the link chain. And then finally, the impact is like the wrecking ball. You want to make the wrecking ball as big and like heavy as possible, and your opponent is trying to make it as small as possible so that it does more or less damage to the car that is like the case that you're arguing against.
Also, another reason that this analogy is true is that the bigger the wrecking ball is, the more strain there is on the internal links to the chain.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, you need all of your internal links to exist. So yeah, if you go back to the card, Jackson. So this card is, it's establishing what is necessary to get from, say, reducing fossil fuel usage, particularly in the context of eliminating subsidies, and how that would lead to a decrease in emissions, right? And so basically, this is just a study which like says as much. If we were to reduce fossil fuel use, we can curb emissions, and it's like cool. So that's like that establishes that internal link, and if you have internal links or whatever, they get you to drum roll your impact.
Wait, Rajiv, before you go on, Jax, can you go back to that slide? Because I don't think we've talked for Yash, we've not talked about like what cards are like.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So this part is called the tag. Basically, it's a summary of what the card says. So like this is basically the key points of what the author is saying that you want to get across. This is the author in the year, so the equivalent of saying like Duke is 18 says. And then this is like the whole quote from the article. And the highlighted parts are the parts you read. So when you'd be reading this, we'd be reading, a study indicates eliminating subsidies could curb emissions by as much as 5%. We'll talk more about this when we talk about case writing, but basically what this does is you can have the whole quote and have the whole context there, but you only have to read the essential parts. So yeah.
In LD, you can either choose to read like the whole card, or sometimes you just paraphrase it if you want to. It's up to you. Generally, novices paraphrase more, and then more experienced debaters will cut the entire card. Okay, drum roll impacts.
Okay. So like Jackson was saying, this is the wrecking ball. It's again why we care. So like if you have a contention, it needs to terminalize to something that you can weigh. And remember, yesterday you were having impact comparison debates. So you need for your argument to result in something which you can weigh favorably against whatever your opponent is going to be arguing that they think is important. So yeah, I would say Sid's note that you should emphasize these and emphasize weighing in general with parents makes sense, because they tend to focus less on like the sort of like internal link story and the technical aspects of debate, and more on like, oh, which side brought up the more important points. And also I would say yeah, it's generally good to quantify impacts if possible. But also, if your impact should relate to your framework, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So if your framework is about like liberty or something, if you can prove like some violation in liberty, oftentimes that's enough, as long as you win that like liberty is important, which is, I think, an additional aspect to LD that can make impact debates interesting, is that you view impact through the filter that framework will establish. So yeah, you just need to make sure that it's something that can be justified as important under a particular moral framework. So maybe we can look at an example now.
Do you want the page or the card, Rajiv?
I guess the argument map. So someone who's not Praj, although I think we already established this, but which line is the impact?
The bottom one.
The bottom one, right? And so like why, or I guess, I mean, I don't know. How do you know that it's the impact, and why do you think that there isn't like another line? That might be kind of vague, but like, why do you think that we can stop once we reach this final point in our like, link chain? Like, why is that the impact itself as opposed to just another internal link?
Because like that's like the goal, like that's the thing that you want to happen from eliminating subsidies.
Yeah. So reducing chance of extinction, we can weigh that, and we have a reason to say in the abstract that it's good or bad, right? Without much prior knowledge at all. So similarly, we want to get all of our contentions to a place where we have an impact that we can weigh and justify that it is good or bad under a particular framework, in order to, be persuasive. So if this is like a utilitarian affirmative, then, it might say that it is good for people to be alive. So reducing the chance of extinction is instrumentally good. And so basically you want to get your impacts to a place where, I don't know, you can like where they make sense, where you can weigh them, where one actually cares about them, as opposed to, less fossil fuel use. Like I said earlier, without prior knowledge, you may not care about that. But, even, regardless of your point of view, you probably want to reduce the chance of human extinction. So yeah, that's how you know that you've reached.
Like imagine
stopping point.
you just tried to weigh preventing climate change, but you didn't establish that climate change was bad, right? How do you weigh that? You're just like, oh, there are less parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, and that's good because, and then you have nothing. You have no reason why that's good. Your impact is saying, okay, here's like something that people care about that matters, and then we can weigh that.
Yeah, I think frequently one place where, especially again, like novice debaters stop too early is when talking about the economy, because they'll just say like economic growth is an end in and of itself. But within debate in particular, we are very skeptical of that claim. So like, why is it good that the economy doesn't collapse, or why is it good that the economy is growing? There are probably a number of reasons why that's true. People have jobs, they don't lose their savings, like, I don't know, it like creates like a healthy international environment. It creates like good politics domestically. But yeah, like, so you need to justify why, a particular thing is good or bad in a more concrete way than just, oh, I think it would be good if like, the graph went up and like, we made more things.
Yeah, another example is actually with this. So I think maybe like Silas had run this once, but otherwise the case that we were mainly running was preventing climate change, but preventing climate change was good because climate change like structurally affects Black people more and structurally affects lower class people more. So like that's example, like a lot of people will also stop at just like climate change, but you have to talk about the impacts further than that. Because a lot of these like like even the impacts you had yesterday do have like smaller like sub impacts, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And like also I think the problem is that like we look at something and it seems obvious to us that it's good or bad, but like within debate we're starting from a blank slate. So you really have to make no assumptions when you're making arguments.
Yeah. Always over explain than under explain.
Yep. Okay.
This is the card. That is the impact. It says hundreds of millions of people in poverty, and people would die, and there would be food shortages, and like oceans would start to like acidify, and we'd lose biodiversity, and like.
Sid, I started to write the author quals for this card, and then I stopped.
Wait, did I get this out of your back files?
Yeah, you got it from the Dropbox. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Okay, that's the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so I think now would be a good point for questions and then probably a break because we haven't had one yet today.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll say to all of you, and this is like probably, I mean, I don't know, even if you could give us like textual feedback, we might create like a place for you to do so. But if we're going like too fast, too slow, if we're being confusing, it's best if you ask us in the moment to stop. It's better if you ask now. If you're still confused about something, you like write down the questions that you had and you ask after the lecture. But also, you know, like we want to change our educational strategies so that they are more effective in, you know, teaching you, which is obviously the end goal. So if you guys let us know about that, that would be.
Yeah. Also, if you all have any feedback about even the presentations themselves, because the goal of this is to create like, because like from the middle school, I got some feedback saying like it was like very disjointed, which I think was very true because we ended up having different people come. So having like a very standard curriculum to teach debate, even because like this year we had a very like strong senior class, even after they leave, having a very strong curriculum to teach people in the future. So any feedback, whether on presentations, how we're doing this, because I would like to make this even bigger next year, is really welcome and would be very much appreciated. So if you want to say it, chat, Discord, message, email, I don't care.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna build on all of these ideas. So if you don't understand them, what the heck? Why does Anthony keep raising his hand?
Because he's being the team mascot.
Yeah.
He's causing my Zoom to freak out. Okay. Yeah, like
Oh, I have a weight on my.
did somebody just mute him?
Who muted me? What is this?
Was that Sid?
No, it wasn't me.
I can't even see the Zoom.
Silas is smiling.
Okay, but yeah, like all of these are like foundational concepts. Like just like what are arguments and how do they function? This is like the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of like debate. And like we're hoping that like over the next couple of years, if you stick with activity, you're gonna get to like calculus. So
Yeah.
you know,
And
if you don't understand how to add, it's gonna be really difficult.
I would say with debate,
Into
like
impact calculus. Oh,
yeah. Okay,
Nice
thank
one,
you for
Praj.
thank you for that contribution, Praj. I would say with debate, there's a much higher barrier to entry. So like the arithmetic part is like harder to learn, but once you know that, like you'll do like you know algebra through like calculus with ease, because you know it really snowballs. And the more that you learn, the easier it is to learn new things because you can read stuff and understand the terminology and contextualize it. So yeah. But anyway, if you guys don't have questions, we'll begin a break.
Yeah, we'll be in break, and then Jackson, let's do the it's like random things. It's just like general, just like small stuff that was like didn't have to be placed on a day. We can do it. It should be a nice 15 to 20-minute presentation, and we'll end.
we just play poker.
Yo, I'm game. Let's go. All right, Praj.
Anthony, stop.
What? It was
Praj,
Praj's
if you want to
idea.
play poker, come to the
I
other
know,
side.
Yeah,
of
come
It's too late.
The
It's
game
So
too
is
late.
late. So late.
Like
so
I'm
late.
asleep and I wake up
That's true,
and you
that's
started
true. It's
after
like
I'm asleep.
3.
No, I just checked the server. Rajiv's. Oh wait, Rajiv, can you pause the recording from now? Because
Yeah.
Okay, Jackson. Do you want me to pull up the presentation because I already have it? Okay.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. Share screen. Don't judge me for my Chrome tabs. Okay.
I didn't get a good look at them.
No, there's just a lot. That's all.
Okay.
There's nothing like.
It's
Yeah.
not like Azula.
Yeah. So these are just like general stuff. It's just like general debate stuff, and I didn't know what day to put it on, and it's a short presentation, so we're doing it today, and it's like no content really. So yeah. Good norms. So put pronouns on tab room so you don't end up like misgendering somebody or something. I've done it once in a round. It wasn't good.
Yeah.
And
Also, it normalizes, like, even if you may think that your gender pronouns are unambiguous, it normalizes people putting their gender pronouns.
Yeah.
If you,
In tab room for Yash, who's not competed, is like a thing for debate that organizes everything for our tournament next week. We're going to be using tab room, so you'll have exposure to it. At the beginning of the year, you'll end up creating your own account. on your profile, there's a place for you to put your pronouns. And then when your like tab room will blast out texts and emails, on that blast, it puts what your pronouns are. And also just doing it verbally before the round. And then also putting trigger warnings on your cases are a good idea, because like with like things like mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, things like that are like more sensitive topics that could be like if somebody's gone through something with that, it could be like they could have trouble dealing with it in round. You should always have an like way to opt out, like for the current topic that I'm doing prep for. I have a case which talks about like domestic violence and stuff, but I also have an alternative contention which talks about like, I think, it's going to be like talking about like racism, because that's an opt-out. That's a different argument that I can write just in case. Jackson, Rajiv, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just make sure that debate is a safe space for everyone.
Yeah. Time, like don't steal prep time, check opponents, like unless somebody is like really over, like I remember one time it was at North Catholic with Ian and PF. This team, it was 10 seconds over and they started reading a new contention. And in the round, and then in the next speech, I was just like, Judge, I was looking at the timer, 10 seconds after the speech, they started reading a new contention. Just like, don't flow this in the round. Just like keeping track of it, but don't be like a douche about it. Don't be like, or like whiny, be like, oh, they're going over time. Just like be chill.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing about this.
That's the best piece of advice for debate in general. Just be a chill person.
Yeah. Also, before speeches, this is obviously as big, but like give an order, like be like, I'm going to cover, like this happens in rebuttals, be like, I'm going to cover the affirmative case and then the negative case, just so it's for easier people to flow and stuff when they're switching pages. Anything to add that it can be not on this slide either, Jackson and Rajiv?
Debate norms. I don't know. Like, don't be like rude to your opponents or judge. Don't. I don't know. Like one thing that I always tell debaters is like people often talk like the term is like a judge screw when they like lose a round because the judge didn't decide it in a way that they thought was good. But I think as long as the judge was honest with you about their preferences, that's like an unfair argument to make, or like an unfair conclusion, because like debate is just about convincing people that you are correct. And ultimately, like if that person is honest about the way that they evaluate rounds, you just need to adapt to them. So I would say as a debater, you do need to be flexible. And that's, I think, one of the great parts of debate, especially, the skills that we train locally, is that you'll be debating in front of, very technical debate judges. And you'll also be debating in front of, like parents and teachers and people who have less experience. And having your arguments be contextual to them and in a way that they can understand is a separate skill. And it's also one that, you should try to work on, rather than simply blaming, your judge for being like not educated or like not, like smart or like didn't speak English. Like those are things that I hear frequently. And I don't, like when people say that.
I think also that's a mentality Ian and I both had at the beginning of the year. That's a mentality Ian and I had at the beginning of the year, and we were talking about this the other day. Rajiv, I don't know if you were there, but like we were just like, it's just like we were both bad at it, and like we just needed to get good. Like it's just like debate is just like another skill, and like judge screw doesn't exist. It's just the better debating normally. Like of course there's situations like there's that one, I think PR judge that we Tuesday said literally just like counts the number of arguments.
Yeah.
Like that's something.
Look, but if you know that, right? And if he told you that.
Just like make about state calls. It was like state or nat calls. We were like, we should go through every single RFD we've gone this year, and if there's something like weird that a judge says, we have it prepared. So like if somebody hits that judge, you just spread and just read like tricks basically. Single line arguments.
More or less, don't be mean. If you act like you're having fun, it just makes the debate space better.
Hold up. Wow, that's kind of, I feel like I was kind of psychic there.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about this. Let's talk about paradigms first. If I hit this. Oh yeah. Yeah, so
go to my paradigm.
So
yeah.
Well, no. My paradigm is not suitable for
Yeah, no, Rajiv. I looked at yours because I had to write a paradigm for
Okay.
the Nova tournament. So paradigms are like things that some judges, typically like more like previous debater judges, um, put to like say like what they like in round, or like argumentation wise. So the way you do it is, so this is tab room. So you go to like the tournament page. So this was the Fox Chapel tournament. So like if I go to my profile, you don't click on the tournament over here. You have to search it. So if I go to Fox Chapel, so I get to the Fox Chapel Rotary Invitational. This was our tournament from the last year. You go to pairings.
Want to catch some DI paradigms?
If I go to LD, okay, if I go to round one. Oh, see, they recently updated it so it shows you when judges have paradigms. But so if you go here, so you click, so you look where you are. So I would say, oh, here I am. I'm going to be neg. I'm against this person in room 255, and this is my judge. You click on the judge, and then these are the decisions. These were the decisions for the tournament. This is their history of judging. And then this is their paradigm. So this was when we just wrote our SCEP case. I remember talking to Jackson right before the round. I was like, oh, I showed him this paradigm. I was like, oh, I should run this like philosophical argument, right? And he was like, yeah, the guy says he likes Phil more than like statistics. So I ran a Phil argument and the guy liked it. So cool. Like doing stuff like this is like helpful.
Yeah.
He goes, I will also drop a competitor if they are abusive during the round because that is, quote, not hype. Oh, you like that? It's a good one.
Where?
Sure. We'll edit it. I'll edit it out in post.
Awesome.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about like paradigms or any other tab room questions?
Can we see Rajiv's paradigm?
Oh yeah, I'll pull it
Sid,
up.
can we see your record?
My record got a lot better like after we had that one weekend where I did like 5 rounds in like 2 days.
Which weekend?
It was 2 weekends. So there was 2 weekends before state quals. I think I did.
Wiccans.
We did a lot of rounds, and then the weekend before state quals, I ended up doing like 10 rounds within the span of like 3 days, because we had that
With
long
whom?
weekend. We had a tournament, like with you and Ian,
Oh, okay.
and we had a tournament. So yeah, and then because I got a lot more comfortable with it, and then qualified for states, but then dropped it.
You'll generally notice if people have paradigms, LD is short, PF is short, and policy is very long.
Yeah, this is his policy paradigm. Also, the place where you do pronouns is right here. Click on profile, then go right here. Put them. Okay. Any other questions? Cool. Rajiv and Jackson, you guys can talk about judge adaptation.
Sure.
Did Rajiv already talk about it?
No, I mean maybe specific things. So yeah, I mean, how do you know what your judge feels, especially if they don't have a paradigm? So the best way is to ask them.
Oh wait.
Yeah, the best way is to ask them. And so, typically, something we ask locally is like, what are your thoughts on speed and argumentation style? So if they're like, oh, I debated policy for 4 years, you should know like everything's game, basically. The debate could be fast if your opponent is okay with that. And there might be some non-traditional arguments. They might be like, oh, my son does debate, and like I read the news. And so, like that'll
I went
just
to
be,
MIT.
yeah, you should approach that. You should approach that judge differently. You should focus on different things. You should focus on if more like if you were like a public advocate, like someone in rather than in a competitive game, someone who is trying to persuade a layperson. So that's sort of the divide that Sid talks about between lay and flow. So like a layperson is just someone who doesn't have technical experience with debate, while flow judge is someone who does. So yeah, like I said, speed is one thing. You can go faster with debate judges because we have ears that are trained to higher speeds. Also, the arguments themselves. I would say if you're in front of a more, a lay judge, you would want to use a bit more. You might want to focus on more persuasive arguments or arguments that seem true on face. Whereas in front of a more technical or flow judge, you might want to use more technical arguments that might not be, might not have a high truth value. Like I wouldn't recommend reading like global warming good as an argument in front of most lay judges. Although I don't know, maybe. Whereas I think in front of, you can get away with more adventurous arguments basically in front of more progressive judges.
Also with speed, this isn't really with judges. I think, Emily, this happened to you, right? At Fox Chapel, you had the person going against you who was going like really well, like it was pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Emily got like Fox Chapel. That was rough. She got first 2 random rounds were against the people who were in finals. And that
Oh
was
yeah,
the tournament.
that was
So,
interesting.
Yeah. But speed, if the other person is going too fast, ask them to send you what's called a speech doc, which is basically, it's going to be like what they read. So like a speech doc is just like what they read off of. And like people should say yes. If they're not saying yes, then there's a problem. Yeah. Also, so a lot of the lay versus flow stuff comes with experience. Like, yeah.
Yep.
Jackson, anything else?
No, not really.
Jackson zoned out.
So I tried to hit
Another
Alt A
generation.
and I hit Alt S, and then like Alt S is not Alt A, and it brought up like 5 pop-ups.
I see.
Okay, cool. So these are some like things that can be helpful. So debate.cards. Rishi, do you want to talk about debate.cards?
Okay. So there's an open evidence project on on that basically compiles cards that have been read in policy debate in high school and college, and I think also Lincoln Douglas debate in high school and college. So those are organized by file. So you might have a file on like impacts, impact defense, and impact turns from Berkeley in 2019, right? But that's not a very convenient way to search for things, because say I wanted to search for, I don't know, an impact about Middle Eastern war. So debate.cards solves that. It is a search bar basically that lets you search for cards using certain keywords. So if I want a card about like the meatpacking industry, I don't have to read literally every file that was ever published. I can just, go to debate.cards, type in like meat shortages, and I'll get the card from the like 2014 innovation dissect. And so, yeah, it's a good way to get cards on obscure topics that other debaters have cut in years past.
Yeah. But also like it's also a good tool to have in round if you really need a card that you don't have. But also just be careful because some of the cards are not good.
Yeah, some of them are terrible.
Yeah, some of them you just have to check. So these next year, I actually didn't know about these till Boomba had, because I copied this from Boomba and he had these. Site Creator I think is helpful. It does an automatic MLA site for each one. Give me 1 second. Who do you need move? Yeah, okay. So Site Creator is good for just like creating like MLA sites. Well, I don't know if it's MLA, but site, it does them automatically. Yeah, it's a good site creator. It's just an extension. Card Cutter, I think if you don't have verbatim, it's helpful. If you have verbatim, Card Cutter I find is not helpful. So which you can talk about verbatim.
For sure. So verbatim is an extension for Microsoft Word. So what it does is it was created by debaters in order to facilitate the easier transfer of debate documents and the easier, most importantly, I would say the cutting of cards. So when you start doing research on your own and you want to cut cards and you want to follow our format, right? You tag, citation, and card text with, bolded, underlined, highlighted text. And, that can be difficult to manage if you're just using the Microsoft Word window. So Verbatim has shortcuts that make it a lot easier to cut cards to the point where some people who are like experts in Verbatim can cut a card in like under 5 seconds. I've seen it happen. It's crazy. like full highlight. Yeah, I don't even know. But anyway, so verbatim just makes it easier to cut cards, to move cards from document to document, and to create speech documents for your speeches. So if you have a device that runs Microsoft Word, I would recommend installing verbatim, and that might make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, and if you don't have verbatim, if you don't have Microsoft Word, it's fine. Don't buy Microsoft Word purely for debate. It's expensive. If you have parents who work at like Pitt or CMU, like my dad works at Pitt, and I got a license for like $10 from it. So like if that was fine, but don't spend like the $130 or whatever it is to get a license. You'll be fine using Card Cutter and Google Drive. And then briefs are like things. So like there's a lot of brief companies. They have run summer camps and stuff, and they have staff who cut evidence, do topic analysis. The topic analysis is really helpful because it's people who've done debate in like maybe middle school, high school, college, and like that's their job now. And they coach as a job, and they provide an analysis of the topic, and it's literally like 5 pages of them just talking about it, which is great. And then, so yeah, some of them you can find online. This year we're going to be getting champion briefs, which is good because Victory is very progressive, so yay. And then yeah, they're good for basic evidence and like basic blocks and stuff, but also remember everybody has access to briefs, so if you want to run a more unique argument, probably won't be using the briefs. And then r/debate, Reddit can be a good tool and a bad tool. It's good. I think Debate Trade has been very good. Like for me, when I was doing a tournament for the March-April topic, I didn't have a ton of prep for it, but I had a ton of prep for January, February, and some tournaments with doing January, February topic. I was able to like trade stuff and all, so like it can be good. Rajiv has a funny story about a card he sent somebody. So yeah.
Wait, what? What's my funny story?
You like sent a card to somebody, then they read it in round.
Yeah. Okay, no.
Yeah.
That was just that I cut a card and it was put in OpenEv at camp, and then they read the card and it had my card tag, and I was like, well, you misinterpreted that.
Yeah.
Sometimes Reddit is good. Sometimes Reddit is bad. Sometimes you can find cards, and sometimes your partner, Ian, is looking for debate roasts for his final focus, and instead loses the round.
Yeah, Reddit, don't let, look, Reddit can help you find things. Don't become like a Reddit debater. Like, they're really cringe. Don't do it.
Yeah. And then the wiki, which is hsld.debatecoaches.org. So the wiki is a place where everybody can like post cases they've read and like arguments they've read. And so a lot of it tends to be more like of like progressive style, which is we debate in what's called traditional style. We won't get into that as much right now, but they're more like 2 styles of debate. But like it can be helpful for like finding prep and stuff that is like already done and is like helpful if you just need stuff. Like when I was prepping for that tournament, I went on the wiki, found some stuff, and it was really helpful. And then I can yeah, so if I go here, HSLD, so like here, I've had the wiki page because of like a tournament I did online, but like, yeah, like there's not much there, but like you see, you have contact info. I have the case that I read. You can download the case right there.
Wait, Sid, what's your disclosure norm?
That's just something saying like, if you want me to just like, if you have like anything specific, contact me 30 minutes before.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. It's like a way to uplayer if somebody runs disclosure on me, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, on like Strake's page. Yeah, this is a big school in Texas. This is like a full wiki page. You see they have theory, which is something else, but like then they have all of their cases for Jan, Feb, for March, April, November, December, and then September, October. So like this is a good way we can find prep, get ideas, and then also it's just like a good norm because like good debaters should be able to debate whether they have unique arguments or not, like best debater win. And it's a good norm post on the wiki. But speaking of that, I don't think there's any more to talk about with disclosure. Rajiv, is there anything else you want to cover with that?
No, I mean, disclosure is a good norm, but it's probably not necessary on the local circuit. But I think that, I don't know, at least I think that we would have better debates if people were more prepared for the arguments that other people are going to read. And hoarding information is bad.
Disclosure is essentially just before the round, you tell your opponent, oh, here's the case I'm going to read. And they tell you, oh, here's the case I'm going to read. So then you have a bit of time to like prep and think about it. Especially, yeah, as what you were saying, local LD, it does not really happen. If you do policy, it's norm. But in PF and LD, I wouldn't worry about it unless you're doing like an online like circuit tournament.
Even on the verbal level, and honestly, and it's like really annoying. I'm like, I'll ask people like, yo, do you want to like disclose before the round, like just tell each other like what arguments we're running? And they're like, no, which just like doesn't make sense. If you kind of get it, like, we want debate to be like an open space and like helping everybody out, and they also like can help smaller schools get prep like us. So like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, honestly, these are the same types of debaters you think that, like, their random, like, bad internal link contention is going to, like, take you by surprise and, like, win them the debate. But, yeah.
Okay. I need, like, that's the last slide. This is Rajiva Jackson. Do you have any other, like, general debate tips or anything like that?
Not really.
I don't know. I feel like we've been talking at them for a while.
Yeah.
Don't want
If
them
there
to
are no
get
questions,
battle
I think we
fatigue.
can wrap up. Do we have any questions? Take that as a no.
One thing here, why don't I might create a Google form, and I would encourage all of you to respond to this. But I'll just say, like, if you could say one thing that you think we're doing well and one thing that we could be doing better. Yeah, I will just make one, and it can be anything. But it's good for us to have feedback, and definitely will help us improve and know also what we're doing well.
Yeah. So plan for next week. Monday we're covering framework. Tuesday we're going to go over like strategy. So like how do you approach every speech, like how you strategize for the 1AR, the 2AR. Wednesday we're going to go about argument generation and like how do you refute arguments, like different types of stuff. And then Thursday we're going to talk about the topic, case writing, and research. And then Friday we're going to have the tournament. So we have 4 of you right now. Daniel should be back next week. So I think the plan is for the tournament, we're going to do round robin and then do finals, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So we have 4 prelims, then in finals. So like all of you will get to debate each other at least once, and then we'll have a final round. Just because of like time constraints, we're going to have all of you guys read the cases that I've written and going to write. I'm trying to make them good. They clash very heavily on the framework. So that's where a lot of debate is going to happen. But it'll be also interesting because you all will have like, it's going to be like we were talking about, like it's going to be like a lot more focused on the technical ability of your debating that you've learned than actual cases. So like it should be a lot of fun. And then we can like talk about, if you guys want to try writing your own cases, how we can go from there and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to drop in the Zoom chat the link to the form. So if you all could fill that out. I can also put it on Discord if that's easier.
Yeah, I put it on Discord.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna dip. I have something I have to get done.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have like anything from this week they thought that they were like maybe iffy on that we can like maybe post some more videos about, or we can talk about more next week that you want us to do like more of or cover more?
Or I guess alternatively, is there something that we haven't talked about, particularly for those of you who have like had debates before, that you wish we would cover?
I guess one thing that I had trouble with when I was debating was like, how do you, if you've like never heard of an argument before, how do you like on the fly come up with a response?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good. Yeah, I would. Yeah, we can do like a lecture about that next week. I think that could be a good idea.
Yeah. The argument generation presentation needs to be redone because I did it at like 4 in the morning one day, and it was just like not good because I didn't know how to word it. So if we can work on that over this weekend and incorporate some of that stuff, I think it would be good.
Yeah.
And that, especially like I'm also assuming it's like things like fill, like dense fill will also be good to like how to
Yeah,
respond
yeah.
to things like
So
that.
like, what are? I mean, would you say that the arguments that you struggled with? Um, I don't know. We would often talk about them like after the debate. So do you think that it was just like you didn't, like you just were so foreign to the like topic material that it was like difficult to answer, or that like you just hadn't heard it within a debate before, so you didn't, I don't know, like you hadn't prepared responses?
Well, the one thing that I was thinking of particularly, I'm sure that there are more instances, but he read like the value of power for nukes, and I was like, I guess it's not that uncommon, but I just didn't really understand that framework.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, we can talk about that. But yeah, I think the important parts are, you have to understand the argument before you answer it. And then just like, if you don't have a lot to say, then just look for the weakest part of the argument and like make fun of it. Because honestly, like straight up, like in policy, if there's a disad that like we don't have, cards against the specific internal link scenario, we'll just read uniqueness evidence, we'll read impact defense, and then we'll just like make fun of their link for a while. It's like, so if something sounds strange to you, it's probably because to the average person, it is strange, right? So that's like a general tip, but I think we can go more in depth into that next week for sure.
Yeah. Also, a big thing that will help is just watching more debates. And kind of like I hate to say benefit, but a good thing that resulted of coronavirus and things going online is NSDA. A ton of rounds from it are now online. Like they were all on Zoom, but a ton that were recorded on their YouTube. Because otherwise things are very circuit, very hard to understand. Everybody's spreading. So like especially for y'all, if you're trying to find rounds, it's hard to find them. But if you go to the NSDA YouTube channel, and then just look at any of the LD videos. I can post some of the good ones. I'm in the Discord, and just watch those. You'll get a lot better at seeing better debaters, how they talk, how they respond, things like that.
I can tell you how much better I got at debate just by watching rounds. And it's not even like, it's not even just like, I watched them, I flowed them, I looked at like the argumentative tips and tricks, but also like, I watched a debate where it was like anti-blackness KF versus T. And then I'm like, if I ever have a debate like that, would I say like this particular argument, So like if you see, I think that it also helps you understand the common like topic literature and like the common, I don't know, like just tropes that occur within debate and get used to different styles. Because I think while the rounds that might be online tend to be of, even the circuit ones, I think they're like, higher speed, lower accessibility, I think. If you're able to, gain the key, access them, they introduce you to so many different kinds of arguments and they just prepare you for all kinds of debate and just like life scenarios. I don't know.
Yeah. And then also, if you're like looking at like a circuit round when they're spreading, find that person's wiki page and just pull up the speech doc and read along with the round, and that can help you.
Yeah,
Because
I think that the TOC rounds from this year, they use speech drop. So like the speech drop is linked in the description of the YouTube video. So then you can just go there and like download the speeches if you want.
yeah, because also then you can look on the cards and read them more in depthly.
Yeah.
In
I
depth.
think most of us who are like older and are still in the club have like, we're here because we have an unhealthy obsession with it. That definitely resulted from and like manifested itself in like watching debate rounds. Like yesterday, Ian was asking me about a policy round and like just like a random prelim from the NDT from like 2017. And I'm like, I know the one you're talking about. And it's I don't know. It's fun, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think like for me, like just doing more in debate was a cause of me going to camp and then just seeing like bigger debaters and like seeing how big of an activity debate was and like how cool it was.
Yeah. There's really no limit on how much you can put in. And it's, I think, in a lot of ways proportional to what you get out.
Yeah, I think Ian is perfect evidence of that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But anyway.
any parting words or anything?
Be sure to fill out the survey is my parting words.
I'll probably, have you guys found the quizzes, have y'all found the quizzes to be helpful? Okay. So I have to make one for the contention thing. And I'll make that and post that sometime tonight or tomorrow. I'm going to take a nap now, so.
Okay, peace.
Yeah. I have to stay in the room because I think speech and PF are still going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, I should probably, I'll just leave my computer on because I wanted to convert once this.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So.
yeah, hope you all had fun. Respond to the survey. Okay, bye.